We're at the Leaderonomics show, and I'm here with Mr. Miha, who's a concert violinist and also an innovation organizational transformation speaker. So, Mr. Miha, what brings you here to Malaysia?
Well, it is the tribe of advertising people, because we have a great relationship with many agencies who are doing innovative and creative and artistic work. And I must say, I have had long conversations with Ham, Singh, and of Adoy magazine, perhaps you know the magazine.
Okay.
And he has dared to invite me to Malaysia, because it's somewhat daring to invite me.
Okay, your background was actually in classical music. Perhaps you can tell us what made you got interested in organizational transformation, because in the view of many people, music is arts and organizational transformation is business, and they typically don't mix. So what intrigued you to actually discover these other side of the world in the eyes of so many people?
But you see, isn't it so when something goes well in organization, we say, oh, this is like music. Isn't that so? People say, oh, this is just like music.
Flows smoothly.
So there is something about that. That means if something goes right and creates a great feeling about it, then it has a musical quality. But of course, I didn't start with this question. It goes back many years, because when I was young, I was just a violin performer. I went many times over around the world and performed a lot, but I felt that there is something here that says entrepreneurship. At heart, I'm an entrepreneur, and I felt that musical industry is moving in a system that is hundreds of years old. And somehow you just cannot step out of that system. If you're successful, then you are part of that system, and you do go until you're thrown out, the next one comes, more or less. And I felt music and performance is much more than just a nice concert in the evening to please audiences. And yeah, basically I felt there is so much in it. If you really go for the top quality of your performance, then you invest so much into it. But in the process, you discover so much in the music that tells you things beyond music, that I felt music is really a social force. And when in the 80s, the world was starting to change, as you know, especially East-West and Europe and so on, I have taken myself out of that traditional stream, and I tried my entrepreneurial streak, and I created a movement. And this movement consisted of taking artists and audiences with me to the crisis areas of the world. I took hundreds of people with me to Budapest, to Prague, you know, in the 80s, when it was just beginning to open up, and then to Dubrovnik, Sarajevo. These were places where the war was raging. And then I expanded that, going through to Russia, Siberia, to China, and then I went to Tibet, and I did things in Amazonia with India. And so I did about 200 events where I proved that if you place meeting of cultures on the musical foundations and art foundation, your whole conversations that emerge, they go beyond politics. They are much higher. So this was my learning, and then I noticed in the 90s suddenly everything changed again, and everybody only talked about economy, capitalism. What type of capitalism do we want to have? And that was a sign for me to change my ship again 180 degrees, and then I went straight into the business, because I felt all that music and art produces could actually help leaders in organizations to broaden their perspective, and not to only think about bottom line, not to think how to make a quick money, but actually to look into the world as a whole and see what is really my contribution. You see, art can open this perspective to the world. And that's why usually, as you know, when you see the concerts, there is posters and they say XY playing, and then at the bottom it says sponsored by.
Yep.
And I say, no, in the new way in the world is this way. Art sponsors business. We sponsor business, because we are dealing with those qualities that leaders are learning today in business. So it's actually helping with the artistic principles to create companies that will be encompassing, that will be aspiring totality, not just to make short-term profits, but actually to become multi-stakeholder venture, you know, where you are at the same time trying to drive your company to be sustainable, to be corporately responsible, to create environment where people grow and love it, what they do, and therefore truly commit to what they do, to have vision, to have good influence on society, because let's face it, all the power is in the corporate world today, in the business world. Not so much corporate, in private businesses, you know, family business. I very much love family business because, you know, it has personal touch and responsibility. So this is why I think art can enter the world of economy and give a great contribution. And I wish this conversation will start going on here in Malaysia as well.
Okay. You talked a bit about cultural change, how when you were traveling in Europe, but how is it very much different in terms of cultural change within organizations? Do you see any similarity? I mean, as you were trying to bring cultural change when you were going with this group of musicians, do you see any similarity in the organizational culture? And how does music actually bring change to an organizational culture?
Yes, you see, I always view an organization anthropomorphically. That means look at the human being as a microcosmos with all extraordinary balances between different organs and so on. It's not by chance that we have two hemispheres, left and right human being. So if you take this model of human constitution and translate that or transpose it into organizational model, you can go wrong. You know, it's really something that we should do much more research. And one of the most fundamental things about human nature is that we have not only rational mind, but we have so much more, the things that are worth living for, you know, all matters of heart, of feelings, of daring things, of risk taking and so on. So, but strangely enough, organizations are run by only extrapolating the left side of the brain to sort of like rational way of looking at things and running. And no wonder that they are failing very often, because you cannot tackle life with only limited instrument of the left side. So I say, how do we create organizations today that are modeled by human nature and say, there is place for rationality, but there is also place for inspiration, and they must be of equal importance, which means we must invest into inspiration. You cannot just wait for inspiration to come. You have to invest. You know, we burn money on wrong places. So why don't we invest in people's development more? Because they say, oh, HR, we believe in people and we have people in the center, you know, many paroles. But let's do it. Let's make it serious. Drop $1 million euro or dollars on the HR department for human development. I'll tell you, wonders can happen. So in other words, we have to rethink what is the environment of company, so the company can become effective and become leader in the new economy, which is, I'm not speaking about .com economy, that's old already. I speak new economy is sustainable. You know, working in such a way that it learns from the cycles in nature, it learns from the inner qualities of human being and becomes anthropomorphic, becomes constructive for the world, and not only taking away but giving. Yeah.
Okay, you talked about organizations trying to find that inspiration bit as opposed to just the rational bit. Now, what advice would you give to an organization who wants to embark on this inspirational journey?
Well, you need to create events where conversations start rolling. You must liberate people from being straitjacketed into certain traditional pattern just because that used to work in the past. It won't work in the future. You have to invite all people in the company to the creative table, to give them opportunity to grow beyond their usual expectations of what you are supposed to do as an employee. It's daring. You know, it can go wrong too. So, I'm just saying, in ideal case, we would like to invite people to come up with more than they have, than just seemingly what they bring. So more that is there, invite them to this conversation and create experiences so that the conversation doesn't die into a lot of talking for nothing. So it must have a goal, because it's, after all, economy. Economy also spells in cash flow. It must show that it is healthy company. It's normal, but don't overrate only money flow. It's one thing, but it has other things that are underrated. So I would say we need to create inspiration centers in the companies. Why not call it by name? When people are inspired, they give you the best of themselves in running the company.
Okay. You're also a president and also a founder of an institute which you've founded quite a fair while back. Can you perhaps tell us a bit about this institute and why you say that it's driving a social change to this institute?
I was already telling you.
Yeah.
The point is that I have always challenged the notion of what is the role of the arts in our time. Because it seems like humanity decided art belongs into the art world, into museum, into gallery, into the concert hall, etc. Which is okay. I mean, I have nothing against it. I wish there was more. And it's there in a very high level, no? Except somehow it doesn't touch the sphere of where decisions are made. I say, don't tell artists where their place is. Have a trust that artists will know themselves where they want to be. And then if the artists decide, I want to be at the center of the power, then they have to fight for it. Nobody will tell you, okay, go to the parliament and talk to the, to the parliamentarians. So in other words, if you as artists decide that you want to be participating in the most critical decision making, then you have to fight for it. It's no other way around. So you have to endure this entrepreneurial stand to see the vision, have the flame to go for it, not give up if you get a couple of blue marks. Keep going until you get there. And when you are there, help with insights you have as an artist, because it's a very different knowledge and insights than executives who came from engineering, or it's very different. And therefore it complements, because our modern society is now at a stage when things are growing together, and one type of thinking cannot cope with this anymore. We need different ways of looking at things together, and then we can cope with it, because we are entering kind of organic state of development, which is all interrelated. And that's why art has a great mission. And I challenge the notion, so not to your question, this was my learning was when I produced these intercultural festivals. At that time, I only knew that cultures are vital to come together to learn from one another. And I did not believe in globalization. Globalization is only good for goods, for selling, buying, so it's good for the commerce. But as soon as you project globalization principles into culture, you kill them. Cultures die when they become victims of globalization. Cultures must go against globalization. You must have courage to go against, because culture is always specific, locally defined, unique, and you cannot make it for everybody. So culture must go against globalization, then we have healthy polarity. In this polarity, creativity can emerge. Otherwise, cultures, you can kiss it goodbye. Global culture is no culture, it's illusion.
Okay, one final question. What would your advice be for working professionals as individuals trying to find inspiration in their areas of work? What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I say, it is urgently necessary that in the working life, look, we spend all our life working, don't we now?
Yes,
we used to at least 9 to 5, but it's not anymore. Now it's 9 to 9. Night and day, the computer blood is always on, and so the technology has not liberated us. It's actually, we are now working non-stop. So then let's call it by the face. If we are all the time with our work, more or less, why don't we create environment at work that can be inspiring? Inspiration has to be created. You need environment in which inspiration can emerge. If you don't prepare yourself, you cannot force inspiration, but you can prepare yourself. And then you hope it will hit. But you cannot force it. But you can make yourself ready. Because many people could get inspired by many things, but they're not ready, so they don't even notice. Because inspiration is not always lightning and a lot of noise. It can be very subtle, very fine, but enormous effect. So that's what it is. You create environment. I repeat, inspiration center, special environment in organizational complex where that is supported and invested.
Invested. Okay. Thank you very much, Miha, for spending the time on Leaderonomics show. It's been a great pleasure having you around.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Love it.